Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this information session focused on the DRK-12 program solicitation, partnership development project type. Before we get started, we wanted to share a few quick tech tips. On our website, cadrek12.org, you'll find a proposal writing toolkit and information about the DRK-12 portfolio of work. We encourage you to explore these and other resources on the site, many of which will help you understand what has been funded in the past by the DRK-12 program. In addition, we are recording this webinar, and both the slides and recording will be posted on our website and emailed to all registered participants. With that, I'll hand the webinar over to NSF Program Officer, Joan Walker.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's here today in this live session. And thank you for those of you who are joining us through a recording at a time that is more convenient for you. And more importantly, thanks to all of you for what you do every day in STEM education. Your work is so important and we thank you for it. As Cadre introduced, I am Joan Walker. I am a program officer for the DRK-12 program, and I am joined by my colleague, Michael Ford. Michael is currently serving as the co-lead of the program, and I appreciate his expertise today. We'll go ahead and get right into the objectives for this session. So one primary objective is to clarify or to elaborate on the language in the current DRK-12 solicitation about the new partnership development project type. We have organized this session around questions that you submitted in advance when you registered for the webinar. We are also going to field new questions that are posted today via the Q&A function. I don't know that we'll be able to get to everyone's questions, so questions that are not answered today can be emailed to the program inbox, and it would be really helpful if you would put partnership dev or partnership in the subject line so we can route your inquiry accordingly, right? Another second purpose or objective for this session was to foster more communication between NSF and the field regarding partnership development in the context of STEM education research. And in that spirit, I look forward to your questions and suggestions and feedback about this funding opportunity. And I wanted to use today to point to other project types or funding opportunities in the DRK-12 program that also relate to partnership development. Okay, this slide is reshares what is in the solicitation right now about partnership development. It's only a few words, and in thinking about how to structure today's webinar, I thought about this session as maybe if you do close reading activities with your students of artifacts, this could be construed as a close read of this passage from the solicitation. It provides the basic information about the funding level, $100,000, the duration of these grants, which is 1 year, and the fact that the project description is much shorter than a research proposal, and that is that it is limited to 8 pages. The passage in the solicitation talks about and emphasizes the importance of connections and co-design between school partners and researchers as being really critical infrastructure for applied research and development. And it describes that projects must include school partners and researchers. And the expectation, it's not a requirement, but it's an expectation that the projects submitted to this project type would lead to the development of a research and development project that is responsive to the DRK-12 program. This passage goes on to articulate that we support both the building of new partnerships, or the expansion of existing collaborations. It goes on to talk about the need for a clear plan or a framework, a guiding framework that would lead to the fostering of partnership or relationship development, power sharing and decision making, and the identification of future projects that would benefit both researchers and school partners. The passage goes on to offer a sample of activities that might apply, but aren't certainly the full range of what might be done in this project type. And then this passage concludes with the statement that all proposals should have a formal mechanism to assess the project's progress, meaning an evaluation plan of some kind, and describe how steps will be taken to use the feedback from that evaluation or that mechanism to inform what's working and what's not, and how to make improvements in the functioning of the team as you pursue goals that are related to the DRK-12 program. So again, those were all the words that we know the field had to work from, and we're so excited to have the opportunity today to answer your questions and to elaborate more on our intentions um, and hopes for this project type. I'd like to begin by just stating that partnership development for us was conceived as an umbrella concept. That partnership development project type is not intended to advance a specific approach or a methodology. Instead, it's intended to provide researchers with supported time for developing the infrastructure needed for their work. And it's also intended to foster applied STEM education research that is grounded in and responsive to the day-to-day work of teachers in schools and the talents and needs of our students. So, Michael, was there anything you want to add to this idea of partnership development as an umbrella concept?
Yeah, sure. So some of the questions that we've got over the last year about this have been, is this the same thing as a research practice partnership? And we chose very purposely to make it, I mean, basically what we got, the feedback we got was people said, well, this is really ambiguous. What do you mean by a partnership? And that kind of thing. Whereas if we defined it really carefully, like a research practice partnership, it would be clear because there's literature about that. We chose not to use specific terms like those because there are a lot of things that would meet the goals of this project type that are not in line with that are outside of the bounds of a research practice partnership. And as according to literature from Carnegie and others who have written about it. And there's other terms too that come into play. Networked NICs and those kinds of things. And they've been written about and argued as really good ways of leveraging educational change. And it's all really good work. It's just that we wanted to include everybody. And in addition to all the people who have like written around those specific academic concepts, and to include really anything that you could argue to us and reviewers that would develop communication between researchers and practitioners to advance your specific context. I mean, we've seen all kinds of different contexts that wouldn't be served well by RPPs or NICs, and but it would do some good, right? It would do some good to just have a little bit of money to get something started to develop communication and to borrow terms to negotiate problems of practice kind of thing, or whatever it is in your case. The idea of an umbrella is that you make the argument for the value of the partnership you're proposing, how you're going to do it, and people will see that for what it's worth in a broader scope than just really specific conceptions of how this is supposed to look. So basically, we're fobbing it off onto you to make your argument for why it's valuable in your context to have one of these awards to develop a partnership. I hope that
Thank you,
helps.
Michael. Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Okay, and in this same vein, we're going to now move on to address questions submitted in advance. And the first question relates to Michael's comments about our objectives. a question we received is what are NSF's key objectives in DRK-12 partnership development projects? And we have several slides in response to this question. The first one is about partnership development and NSF priorities more broadly. I heard Dr. Panchanathan talking last week and was inspired to add this to our conversation today. NSF's goal is not simply to fund and advance scientific research, it also supports the translation of research and the development of partnerships needed for research translation and knowledge mobilization. The DRK-12 partnership development project type is consistent with these dual agency goals. And the partnership development project type also reflects the agency's emphasis on place-based innovation. As Michael said, we're relying on you to be the expert on your context and in what way partnering might lead to innovation and address problems of practice in that context. And if you've heard Dr. Panchanathan speak, you've heard him say once, if not 100 times, opportunities everywhere, innovation anywhere. So that's one point that I wanted to emphasize. I'm going to be quoting from the solicitation throughout this information session because when we revised the solicitation last year, we tried to be very thoughtful and deliberate about emphasizing partnership throughout the document. So while the passage on partnership development, that project type is very short, the whole solicitation and document contains nods to this and underscores the importance of collaborative partnerships. And one place that this shows up is in the DRK-12 program objectives. 3 objectives for the program: 1, building knowledge. The second, directly related to supporting collaborative partnerships among education researchers, practitioners, and school leaders, with the goals of extending relevant scientific literatures while developing more effective practice. And these 2 goals lead to the third program objective, which is building the field of STEM education. So if you haven't looked at the entire solicitation as a source of information about what our objectives are, I encourage you to look through it. And I'll point to some of these passages again throughout today. More practically, we were aware of the need for a project, a partnership development project type. On the one hand, school researcher partnerships are the foundation of all DRK-12 projects. All of our work that we fund takes place in the context of formal education and requires a partnership between researchers and practitioners. And yet, establishing and sustaining partnerships requires substantial time on researchers' part. And we feel strongly this labor should be acknowledged and supported. And so that was one driver of implementing this project type. Another driver was school partners and their context. COVID-19 in particular impacted schools' capacity to partner with researchers and to serve their communities. We heard repeatedly about difficulties in recruiting and retaining partnerships. And we recognize that's an infrastructure problem. Schools and teachers need support to address new, emerging, and longstanding problems of practice in STEM education. So these 2 drivers were also underlying the addition of this project type to the solicitation. Another passage in the solicitation that I would draw your attention to that's relevant to partnerships is this idea that we seek proposals that address immediate challenges facing pre-K STEM education, pre-K through 12 STEM education. These are immediate challenges, emerging challenges, and proposals that anticipate radically different structures and functions of teaching and learning. So we welcome both. Your partnership might be focused on something that's immediately challenging or something that schools and researchers anticipate on the horizon. Projects funded by the program should demonstrate, here again, a well-rounded understanding of the day-to-day work and expertise of educators. The partnership should be grounded around understanding that context and the talents and needs of teachers and the students and communities that they serve, at the same time connecting to national, state, or district priorities as a rationale for, as Michael referred to earlier, what is the rationale? Making the case, I think was the phrase that you used, Michael, making the case for the proposal. And you could point to priorities at the national, state, or district level. You could point to student needs, talents, and you could point to the day-to-day work of teachers. In this same passage from the solicitation, we point to innovations that might be something that you focus a proposal on, and you will see here that one of them I've emphasized is models of collaborative partnership between teachers and researchers. Models of partnership are something we would love to see proposals on, not just a proposal about partnerships, but also proposals that talk about the kinds of partnerships and the frameworks that guide them. I also wanted to emphasize this last sentence in this section, which is proposals are encouraged to adapt ideas, concepts, theories, practices, and test them across contexts and populations. So for example, a partnership proposal might take an innovation, might be used to set the stage for adapting an innovation that worked in one particular context and applying it to another. And I wanted to point to the structure of the program being set into 2 program strands, that a partnership development proposal would need to declare whether it's focused on the teaching strand, where the focus is primarily on teacher knowledge, beliefs, and practices, teacher learning, concerns related to teacher professional development, or problems of practice, for example. And on the other hand, there could be partnerships focused on issues related to student learning. That is, student learning or other characteristics that are associated with learning STEM content. In both cases, proposals need to make the case for how the proposal is an improvement or could lead to improvement over current practice. All right, so that I hope gave a little bit more clarity on what are NSF's key objectives. I'm going to turn to another question now that we received, and that question is about partners. Who do you envision could be the partners? I read that it has to be K-12 partners. How about other university partners? What if the goal is improving K-12 teacher education and the partners are other math educators? And we would respond that this opportunity is designed to connect researchers and pre-K-12 school partners. Partnerships, and this is direct quote from the solicitation, partnership development projects must include school partners and researchers. Certainly issues of teacher education are relevant to the partnership development project type, but if the goal is to develop partnerships among university partners, then a different funding opportunity would be appropriate. Michael, do you have anything you want to add to anything I've shared thus far?
Yeah, just a question that we got in the question, the Q&A. In terms of school partners, does that mean only teachers, or does it mean, could it mean district representatives, administrators, other roles in the pre-K-12 schooling system?
Mm-hmm. I think the reality we all know is teachers aren't free agents. They work in districts. Letters of collaboration from district leadership would be important to demonstrate the school's commitment. Again, I think it depends on the kind of partnership, the focus of the partnership. Whether it's establishing a new partnership, we would want to see district buy-in in particular for that. If it is centered on particular problems of practice, we would want to see strong levels of teacher engagement as a partner to leverage their expertise and knowledge on the context. Michael, does that sufficiently answer the question?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it was something that came up in the audience.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for checking in on that. All right, I think we'll move on to the next slide. Another question we received is, would it be required to include at least one K-12 school in the partnership, or could the partnership focus on informal education? And the response that we've developed to that is DRK-12 proposals that involve informal education must have clear implications for and ties to learning in K-12 settings. And that's a direct quote from the solicitation. We do welcome proposals focused on informal education, but you would be responsible for making the case of how it is directly relevant to formal K-12 learning. If you're interested, if your project is focused on informal STEM education, the Advancing Informal STEM Learning program has a partnership development and planning opportunity, and I would direct you to their solicitation to learn more about that. If you want to send us a concept paper to our inbox, we'd be happy to look at it to give you a bit more specific guidance, given the parameters of what you're planning, as to whether an informal partnership is appropriate. Again, could it focus on informal education? Yes, and the connection to formal education would need to be very clear. Another question we received, is it necessary to have the primary organization on the grant be consistent with our eventual DRK-12 primary organization more generally? We seek clarity around how consistent elements of the partnership grant need to be with what we have in mind for a later DRK-12 submission. And if I understood this correctly, this is the response that we developed. Reviewers will be concerned with the proposal in front of them and with your immediate plans for partnership development and the extent to which the work described is in alignment with DRK-12's program goals and objectives. So that needs to be very clear. Reviewers will also evaluate the extent to which the partnership development proposal appears to serve both and all partners. Proposals that engage schools only in the service of a researcher-led agenda are not responsive to this project type and could be better framed as perhaps an exploratory project. Partnership development, we recognize that, is emergent. It is not predetermined. And so a shift in focus between the initial aims and a subsequent research proposal is expectable. So coming back to the question, we would want to see a very high quality partnership proposal for the partnership at hand. And we know you're heading somewhere with this, and we're glad of that trajectory, but don't let that eventual goal crowd out the focus on the quality of the immediate project at hand. All right, another question. Does the partnership have to be pre-developed prior to the proposal submission, or can establishing a partnership be part of the proposal? And here I'm going to quote again from the solicitation. Proposals should articulate how and why they intentionally build new or expand existing collaboration. So as we said at the beginning, partnership is a big umbrella. We recognize that partnerships of many kinds with different aims could be proposed. So the short answer to this question is no, partnerships do not have to be pre-developed other than to the point that the partner has signed on and has made clear, informed the selection of the problem, agreed to participate as a partner, and has an understanding based on the narrative of what the partners will undertake. I want to emphasize that although this project type supports many kinds of partnerships, all proposals should provide a clear plan or framework, a guiding framework for engagement, relationship development, decision-making, and focusing on future projects. Activities within the scope, again, some of the things we suggest, but certainly are not limited to, are workshops, stakeholder meetings, project planning, and particularly explorations regarding the positioning and capacity of the team to work together to advance STEM teaching and learning. So again, a team-focused approach, something that is focused on the partnership itself and the partner's pursuit of the goals that they are envisioning.
Can I add just a couple of words there?
Please do, Michael.
So yeah, well, I mean, basically, reviewers are going to look at these, and reviewers they're basically you and your peers. So they know about school context, they know about relationships with with researchers and school partners. And so what this program, what this project type is really about is about getting your foot in the door to establish some working relationship with partners. So what counts as a partner depends on your situation. And so what you need to do is really like plan out as well as you can what kind of relationship what kind of relationship you want, what kind of goals you have, and both referring back to the last slide also, that what are you going to get out of it, and what are your researchers going to get out of it, and what are the school partners going to get out of it. Okay, so that all doesn't have to be done, but there should be a plan that's really clear about how all the parties are going to get what they want out of it. And plans could be things like having so many meetings. It could be like, okay, here's the meeting's agenda, and everyone's on board with now I can think just ideally, they're just saying, being able to say to reviewers, everyone's on board with these goals. Okay, the goals you can write the goals however general you want them to be. They don't need to be like completely negotiated problems of practice, because that's part of the process and the relationship that we were trying to start here. And so yeah, figuring out like how to argue that in a plan. I'm just trying to put more words on these things, because actually there's a lot of common sense when you think about it as a reviewer. Like, what would you want to see? You'd want to see that they understand who they're talking to, and the people that are talking to are going to, be on the same page. And on the same page about what? Well, it's on the same page about the kind of things we want to get done, and what do you want to get done, and why? Why is that important? So yeah, so that's again sort of like broadly reviewers looking at partnership development, and in terms of, you don't have to have an existing partnership, but you should have a plan. I mean, I've sat on panels that did partnerships in various ways, and there's so many different things I can't even start to tell you. But like, ideally, at least there's a person that you have contacted, and there's an interest on the other side to do the kind of thing that you want to do, and to demonstrate that, and then what you're going to do about it in, well, a year and a little bit of money.
Thank you, Michael. All right, let's move on to another question. I understand the partnership development projects, and this person, thank you for quoting from the solicitation, that you're expected to lead to the development of an R&D project that's responsive to the DRK-12 solicitation. And you're curious about how well formed the R&D project idea should be at this stage for the partnership development project to be competitive. And so we're going to continue on this in this same vein, and what Michael was just saying. And this depends, how well formed the R&D project is, depends on the nature of the partnership. The aim of the partnership might be initially forming a relationship with the school partner, in which case then the R&D might not be very prominent at all. And more of the time and resources are devoted to forming that partnership, doing needs sensing, or mapping out where the partners have overlapping interests and how they might move forward together. If it's a more mature partnership, then we might expect, or should expect, or could expect to see a more well-formed research and development project idea that could involve framing out perhaps a pilot study if there is current work going on in the context, or a shared understanding of um, a problem of practice that might become the focus. What would it look like to do an inquiry into that? So again, it depends. I guess what I'm wanting to say is the alignment needs to be there. If the goal is initially forming a partnership, then it would not be appropriate to expect that a robust R&D project idea would be entailed in that work, but it might be appropriate for a more mature project. The goals can be relatively broad and emergent because where you begin may not be where you end, depending on how partners work together, the knowledge that's uncovered across the project, et cetera. But the word I want to emphasize here is alignment. PIs must define deliverables that align with the project-specific goals. So are the deliverables ones that could support the partners as they take next steps? Are the deliverables one that the field would regard as important to advancing science and practice? Another question. Now we're gonna, I think that's all we wanted to say, all the questions that we'd received and prepared responses to regarding the aims. We're gonna move now into talking more about evaluation of the proposals. And this question, how does NSF define successful partnership development within the context of DRK-12 projects? I'm gonna quote again from the solicitation. Successful proposals demonstrate how they build on fundamental research or previous or current applied research and development efforts. They should explain their theoretical and empirical justification. And since this isn't a research project, there can still and should still be a guiding framework, set of principles for partnership development and decision making. The essential question is, why is the project designed the way it is? And I think, Michael, this gets back to what you were saying earlier, is you've set the goal, and the goal and the design of the proposal should be in alignment. We are naive to your reasoning. We're naive to your context. Reviewers can know on what is provided on the 8 pages in the proposal and the supplementary information. But more than anything, we want to understand why the project has been constructed the way it is in terms of demonstrating its origins and its importance and its alignment. I wanted to note here too that the solicitation points to a Dear Colleague letter that we published last year on knowledge mobilization and the importance of this. So a successful partnership would focus on facilitating knowledge exchange. They would not be a traditional researcher-led R&D effort. They would be focused on reciprocal benefits and mutualism. And again, the question to ask, is it a successful project, would be closely aligned to the goals of the DRK-12 program and of this project type, which focuses on partnership development, knowledge sharing, evaluation of partnership processes, and building the team's capacity to conduct whatever work is being undertaken.
Yeah, could I just add a couple of words there?
Please do.
Just to emphasize the point that what our role is at NSF and what your role is in the field. Our role is to basically set an agenda, and the agenda is really broad. It's partnership development as a broad umbrella in the DRK-12 program, which was a very broad program. It's improving pre-K to 12 schooling for STEM learning. That's pretty broad. So the reason it's broad is because like really, really wonderful ideas come from very creative people who are in their contexts and are doing the work. And we don't want to put any limits on what those great ideas are. We want to hear from the field, what is your great idea, and how are you gonna like, make it happen? Um, so we ask outside reviewers to review them because we have the merit review process, and then we look at the reviews and things, and we look at like, okay, so is that a great idea? We don't have the ideas, we don't. That's not our role. Our role is to say, here's the question, here is the problem. The problem is, in this case, emphasizing the knowledge mobilization, dear colleague letter. In this context, knowledge mobilization means having NSF investments in the DRK-12 program have impacts, practical impacts beyond, well, I guess as broad as possible is the way to think about it. So one common way of thinking about that is practical impacts versus only writing research articles, let's say. But any and all, we basically that dear colleague letter is another example. Our role is to set an agenda to identify an issue, and the issue is there's a lot of people that know things in the field, and we can see this, and they're not really having an impact the way they should, and so that's a concern because federal dollars have gone to helping people create those ideas, and we also want to have impacts, and so again, we're telling you the same thing we tell reviewers. Here's the goal. The goal is really broad, and you as the field, you in the proposals, you define what the goals are, and you argue that they're important. You argue that that is important in your context, and if you make a good argument, then that's what we're looking for. Not for really specific things, because we don't know as much as you do.
Thank you, Michael. All right. The next question we got, what criteria, speaking of reviewers, what criteria do reviewers typically use to evaluate DRK-12 partnership development proposals? And even though these are not research proposals, we stand by and apply the merit review criteria to these proposals. Intellectual merit and broader impacts, and 5 areas related to both of those. What is the transformative potential or the creativity of the approach? Is the approach well reasoned? And the star here reminding us that, and again, quoting from the solicitation, partnership development proposals, the plan or the approach, there should be a clear plan or framework for fostering relationship development, power sharing, decision making, and the identification of future projects that have mutual benefits. The merit review criteria also involves the qualifications of the team, the resources available to the team, and mechanisms to assess success. And again, the star there indicating to me to remind myself to emphasize that there is no deliverable per se for this project type other than an evaluation plan. There must be some form of evaluation relative to the proposals, which would be in alignment to the proposal's goals and processes. And again, looking for proposals that are aligned to the DRK-12 program's objectives. Can you please clarify a bit further the difference in expectations for the project description for a partnership proposal compared to other proposals? And here we're going to talk a bit more in terms of like technical support or proposal preparation. And the first thing I'd like to say is to point everyone to the new PAPG that was recently published in terms chapter 2, specifically proposal preparation instructions. A couple of changes that apply to all project types are that a mentoring plan is now required for graduate students as well as postdocs, and there's no page limit on the biographical sketch, but getting to points that are required elements required for these proposal are And you could see this in the required sections of a proposal in the current solicitation. I wanted to point to several aspects that in the across the panels reviewing the proposals that emerged as somewhat distinct in terms of this project type relative to other project descriptions. And the first is the evaluation plan. These budgets are very small, and we understand that external evaluation can be costly, but an external evaluator is not necessarily required. Evaluation can be conducted by an advisory board or a developmental evaluator. What's important here is some independence from whoever is conducting the evaluation from the project team members. Another aspect of or required element is IRB. And here you might be thinking, but it's not a research proposal, so why do I need IRB? There are a couple of things here. As DRK-12 supports R&D, when submitting in the, when uploading the proposal to the platform, you're asked to check what kind of project type it is. Right now, the option you need to check is research. That's the only available option for this project type. And while the project may or may not involve human subjects research, that's up to the PI's institution to determine. I suggest marking pending on the cover sheet unless a waiver has been obtained saying we've reviewed this and it does not involve human subjects. And again, the variability in whether it involves human subject or not depends on the maturity of the partnership. If the partners are in a position to conduct preliminary research, then human subjects research would apply. A third area that I wanted to mention is the data management plan. The data management plan complements the project description by explaining what kinds of information or data are being collected during the project, who has access to that, and issues of privacy and security. And it surprised me in running the panels how much reviewers turned to this document to fully understand the evaluation plan. So perhaps reviewers are relying more on the data management plan because it's not a research proposal per se, but they're looking to see consistency between what's described in the narrative and the kinds of data that are described in the data management plan. I'll point to the PAPG, which says a valid data management plan may include a statement that no data management plan is necessary. However, that statement should be accompanied by a compelling rationale for why the data management plan is not required. So in other, I don't want to say this is a pro forma or a part of proposals in other ways. This is a very important part of any proposal. But for this project type, the data management plan should be consistent with whatever the evaluation plan has been laid out or described in the narrative. We're coming into the last set of prepared questions and answers, so I'll prime that to say we're coming into an opportunity to answer some live questions or questions that have already been posted in the Q&A. Thank you to whoever posed this question. I'd like to learn more about what the POs have learned after this last round of reviewing proposals. And I would say that this has been the first round of reviewing proposals. This was the first year this opportunity was available. So we're still learning. Reviewers are learning too. Program officers and reviewers are learning about this project type, and I did not want to miss this opportunity to invite you to be a reviewer for this project type or the DRK-12 program. If you don't submit a proposal in this next cycle, please do send us an email to the program box and put reviewing in the subject line to help us understand your interest in this opportunity and this service to the field. I would say that reviewers looked to, and here we come back to the stated goals and objectives in a specific project proposal, a partnership development project proposal. They look to the description of goals and objectives as anchors for the entire proposal. They also asked given the variability of the kinds of proposals that were submitted, they also asked themselves this question first, right? What kind of partnership is this? Is it the formation of a new partnership? Is this the expansion of an existing partnership? The question of, are the aims, activities, and frameworks aligned? And is the proposed work responsive to the DRK-12 program? So those are some remarks that I could share about reviewers. Here are some more things that I would share in terms of what have POs learned from this first round of proposals. And these are a few categories. Fit. Could the project have been submitted as another project type? Could the proposal have been submitted to, say, another project type within the DRK-12 program? And I would say that proposals that appeared to be a researcher-led effort did not fare well. And I emphasize the word appeared because, again, reviewers are only working from the 8 pages of the narrative. It's a brief narrative. And hearkening back to what Michael said, we want to be clear that everyone's on board and engaged in the decision-making process. Alignment, again, I'll underscore, do the goals and processes align to the kind of partnership that's being proposed, new or expanding, and to the project-specific aims? Issues of power. Do school partners have voice in conceptual development and decision-making? And in particular, if it's a mature project, if it's a mature partnership, I would encourage clarity about how school partners shaped the identification of the problem that's being pursued, a selection of the proposed approach and intended outcomes, being very clear about the evolution and how the partners have arrived at where they are, giving voice and power to the partner. Mutualism, questions that reviewers asked is, how does the school partner benefit? And are these meaningful benefits? Are those clearly stated? Budget was a concern. Does the budget offer equitable compensation or describe how compensation is aligned to the contributions and roles that the partners play in the project? Again, evaluation and data management plan. Questions here that I in particular looked at were, do all partners have access to the project data and information? Are all the partners engaged in using those data or that information for evaluation and decision making? And then there were other small, maybe these are just habits that creep into the writing of a narrative, but are school partners referred to as peers and partners, or are they referred to as participants or research subjects? These are important details of language. This last question I selected because I wanted to use it as a jumping off point for talking about the complexity of this work. This question is about, how do we foster partnerships with developing organizations that may not be set up to receive federal funds, partners that would be equal in all ways, but aren't, it's difficult to know how to set them up for success. And could they be consultants? But if they're framed as consultants, then are they viewed as partners? There's a lot of complexity here. And so while NSF, I wanted to point out, while NSF is increasingly calling for partnerships, the most prominent example being the new Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate. While the agency is calling for partnerships, there are barriers to this kind of work that are both external and internal. And we need to hear from you about what these barriers are, so we can think together about the complexity, and we can think through how to make our systems, which are geared to support research, friendly to these new kinds of partnership development enterprises. I wanted to take a minute to turn to Cadre here. I understand that they, in preparing this, that this could be an opportunity for y'all to share some partnership development resources in the chat. We have the program has two resource development centers that support the DRK-12 program and investigators, and we thank them so much. Thank you again, Cadre, for your help today. Cadre is our primary resource network. We also support the Evidence Quality and Reach Hub. And that's Hub's responsibility in particular focuses on the translation of research knowledge to practice. So I refer you to both of these resource centers and as resources. And if you don't see resources there that you need, to contact either program officers or the resource hubs themselves, saying, I really would like some support in this area, or could you point me to some other resources? Again, we're all learning. This is a new funding opportunity, and we're all cognizant that our systems are set up for research, not necessarily partnership development. One last question. Are program officers available to meet with applicants when they have specific questions? Absolutely. We respond to concept papers. You could send a concept paper up between 4 and 6 weeks prior to the proposal submission deadline. Partnership development projects are tied to the annual submission deadline, which is November 13th this year. And as Kadri stated at the outset, there is a proposal development toolkit that we could point you to for the development of any DRK-12 research proposal. You could prepare a one-page concept paper, which is patterned after the one-page project summary, which contains an overview of the project. Who are the partners? What are the aims? How is it intellectually meritorious? And what are the potential broader impacts of the work? And you could email that to the program inbox. But again, to help us track these inquiries, please put partnership dev or partnership development in the subject line. We welcome your inquiries about this. All right, so that is it in terms of the prepared questions that we responded to. And now we're going to turn our attention to the new questions that were received during the webinar. Michael, I have been talking. Is there anything in the Q&A that you would like to pull up to address at this time?
Well, so I kept up pretty well, I think, with in the chat. Let me see. You could also look through the ones that have been answered. They've been moved down to the part that says answer questions. The only other thing I would say is what I'm hearing through the lines here, they're kind of like questions about, what counts as a partnership, which we're trying to answer, and then what sort of like pay attention to, in terms of like what to say in 8 pages. And the only one other piece of advice that I would bring is, if like, which we assume, like often we get proposals from the researcher side, and people on the researcher side who have done partnerships will be reviewing in some form, will be reviewing your proposal. One thing that is very typical trip up point for them is, and this has increased probably in the last few years, is really paying, they're looking for how the other partner is going to have a voice in the partnership. And so think creatively about that. Okay. They don't get tripped up if you say a lot about that. It doesn't actually, I don't even think it matters that you say particular things about that. They get tripped up when not enough has been said about that. Then they assume that the researcher hasn't thought about it. Okay, and then the question comes up, and then people start talking about it, and they say, "Yeah, there's really nothing here." They open up the proposal, which is never a really good idea. Well, during a review, like this, we're on page 9, down there it says this, and then people's start thinking about that issue. And so I just wanted to give advice to make sure that one of the things that you cover is, if you're on the researcher side, then how is the other side of your partnership or sides gonna have a voice in the development of the partnership? It comes from a concern of equity and a historical problem with researchers kind of being top down with practitioners. But that's been a sensitive point. And I didn't actually even run this panel last year. Joan did. And so literally what's going to happen when you send inquiries to that email is like, I'm going to get them and then I'm going to send it to Joan. So not to be ambiguous about that. But that, yeah, I just wanted to share that one kind of broad concern that it very often comes up.
Thank you, Michael. And thanks for the help in answering the questions. I don't see any new questions that have been unanswered. One thing I would share is, yes, the panels were run this year. We are in the process of moving award recommendations forward, and when those awards have been made, I will certainly share that information. It will be publicly available, but I will share that with cadre so they can draw the community's attention to those awards and as exemplars. Right now, everyone who applied this year had no prior examples to work from. We were all operating in a new space.
Can I
So
ask, can I ask a question,
please
Joan?
do. Yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head how many of these we received this year? I should know.
Yes, I do know how many, and but I'm not sure that I can share that since it's not public information.
Oh, okay.
We received a strong response, I would put it that way. Um, and um, and we thank the field for that response. It affirms that this project type was needed and is welcomed. And we recognize that it is helpful, and we recognize that it is a small budget amount. We're learning from folks and their projects of how these funds can be spent and made to go a long way. I think we're continuing to think about in the next solicitation, where would this go? In my own mind, I think there's a leap between partnership development and a full proposal preparation. Maybe more supports for planning grants would be appropriate. I don't know. We're looking to hear from you about the supports you need in order to, as Michael has a phrase that I like a lot, widen the gate, broaden participation, encourage more proposals from people who have not been funded by NSF before, and partnership development project types being a great way to support those projects. I see some new general questions coming in.
Can I just add to that also?
Please do.
So there was a question earlier about how many we expect to fund, which is typically something that appears in a solicitation. That's about an expectation, so it's not, it's not specific to this year or how many number. But I would just say we didn't get enough because we want to fund a lot more. Okay. Just in your minds about, is there space in this program? Is there money in this part of the program? Yes. They're relatively small, and the goal that we have of increasing the number of people that are new submitters to the program and can get ducks in a row, have some time to get ducks in a row for submitting something, even an exploratory, a small exploratory effort, something like this, is one of the main goals of this. It's not the only goal, but it is one of our main goals. So we're interested in broadening the people that we fund, and this is one mechanism that we're using to do it. And so, how many do we want to fund? As many as possible. Literally, like there's another program that's sort of like that too, the career program. If you're familiar with that, it's for early scholars, and the career program is run in the very beginning of the year so that the money comes out of any program that it's relevant to in the beginning of the year. And if you ask anybody like how many careers are you gonna fund, and then they'll say the same thing, as many as possible. We look for good proposals, we want to fund them, and if they review well, we'll fund them.
There are a couple of new questions. One I'm seeing is, are the successful projects from last year available to see online? And I would say not yet. Um, we um, we are waiting for the final deciders. As you know, or if you've proposed for us before, this can take a long time, longer than any of us would like. But I think we're we're looking forward to being able to showcase the proposals that were funded this year, and continuing to do outreach on this project type. Um, and what else I'm seeing here are questions that are maybe more technical regarding the budget allocations. How do different proposals deal with that? Are there expenses that are not allowed? Um, so perhaps a technical webinar or information session would be helpful for that. I think, again, if you're talking about how did you deal with the budget allocation for partners, I think it depends on their role in the project. People who play a significant role, a significant time investment, should be compensated accordingly. In the solicitation itself, we placed a note under the budget that we recognize that sometimes participants, teachers in particular, the compensation for teachers is restricted according to perhaps personnel agreements within the district or where they are employed. And if that is the case, that should be explicitly mentioned. But what we're looking for is equitable compensation relative to are some consultants on the projects being paid more generously than others, and there's no description of why that is the case, that that's that's a concern in terms of being reflective of equity among the partners in terms of their power in the proposal.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. That's what people look at is whatever in your situation, at least mention if there's limits on what you can pay teachers, let's say in a school district or because of a union agreement or something, just say that and that we've covered it, because then they won't trip over that.
Exactly.
So oh, I'm sorry. I got lost. I was like looking at a different question here.
One of the questions is, can we share the approximate percentage of funding for this project type? And I can't yet because not all the awards have been made. I'm sorry that information isn't available right now.
And it's the first year too, so it wouldn't really be that informative. Like we just rolled this out and people are trying to figure out what it is, which is, part of what we're doing here. Reviewers too. But once it gets rolling, like I said, like this is something that we want to fund as many as possible.
And I'm seeing a question here that I would refer to as a staging question, right? If you're staging a trajectory of building on the partnership, thinking like, so my partnership development project gets funded for the 25-26 school year, and then the next cycle for DRK-12 comes up that fall. How is there a lag in between when the partners might be ready to propose something and when the proposal deadline? We understand there are mechanics, and we understand that you're also trying to align the calendars of academic institutions and public school partners or other partners that there may be hiccups in those deadlines, and I don't know what to say about how to address those issues in gaps. But we need to have these kinds of questions on our radar for thinking ahead to the next solicitation and how to support this kind of work fruitfully.
I would say, I would say people do a variety of different things there on that. And from what I've seen, the strategy that like I think I like the best is to get one of these, and then the very next round propose something for the DRK-12 small, I guess small R&D, small design development, let's say an exploratory or something like that, where you say in the proposal that you have a partnership development, you're in this partnership development, here's what partnership development's about. And then reviewers feel like you have your feet on the ground and you're not coming into that proposal having to build everything. They see that even if the work isn't already done, they see the work you're doing. Like the keyword is doing, and they know it's going to be 6 months until you hear anything probably. Um, uh, and I mean, what's to lose? I don't think it's a bad thing to come right in the next round, because the fact that you could describe what you're doing is very, very important for reviewers to have their confidence. Um, and if it doesn't get funded that year, then you get the feedback and you could go the next round.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so there are no other new questions that I see. So we're going to move to the second objective, which was using this as an opportunity to foster more communication around partnership development. And I wanted to point to other funding opportunities in the DRK-12 program that are relevant to this. And one of these is workshops and conferences. Workshops and conferences can be funded for up to $200,000 and for a one-year duration. There is no specific due date for this. These can come in at any time. They are not tied to the annual submission due date in November. And we invite proposals that bring together researchers and school partners to advance or identify research agendas for the broader community or with implications or of importance to the broader community. Again, convenings that are focused, this is all straight out of the solicitation. If you want to read further about this, around this project type, convenings focused on facilitating reciprocal exchange of knowledge and expertise between researchers and education professionals are particularly welcome. We encourage you to consider what kind of convening might inform the construction of partnerships, barriers to partnerships, rewards of partnerships, models of partnerships and collaboration. Other areas of interest that could be funded by workshops and conferences include the integration of advanced and emerging technologies and ways of supporting pre-K-12 STEM education's capacity to respond to emerging societal grant challenges. In thinking about a workshop or a conference, we encourage people to think beyond a single event concentrated over several days, to think about more flexible, multi-stage convenings that allow time, maybe distributed over time within the 1 year, that allow for knowledge building, and diverse modes of participation, including virtual participation, face-to-face convenings, and combinations of those across the year. These kinds of workshops are not a research proposal, but they do have components that are required. The PAPG in proposal preparation, chapter 2, explains this. It would require a conceptual framework, a draft agenda, the kinds of participants or expertise that would be showcased or needed for the event, and possible outcomes or products. So again, I would encourage you to think about what kind of support would this community who's interested in partnership development need? What kind of convening would advance folks who are doing partnership development, their capacity to work and engage with partners. The other funding opportunity I wanted to draw attention to are syntheses projects. These are funded up to $600,000 and have a 3-year duration, and they are tied to the annual due date. They should be submitted on cycle. These kinds of projects include a range of work, including literature reviews, qualitative or mixed methods, metasyntheses, and meta-analyses. And these are designed to, as we all know, a great lit review, a great meta-analysis or synthesis is a service to the field in terms of building knowledge. So we're looking for more of these. If you think partnership development is a particular area that's ripe for a lit review or a metasynthesis or analysis of some kind, I would encourage you to create a concept paper and submit that to us for feedback. I also would point you to the solicitation. These are excerpts directly from the solicitation about these project types, and there's more material about them. But just to be clear, we receive very few of these kinds of project types, and we would like to receive more. So thanks for considering them as a project type. All right, we've done the live Q&A, so I see a new question coming in. Is NSF still funding RCNs? Yes, they are. And I think that if you have a question about an RCN, that the best way to have a research collaborative network would be to submit something to the program for reply rather than use this general venue here. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being here today and for making time to engage with this either in real time with us or if you're watching a recording, thank you so much. Thanks for everything you do every day for STEM education. Your work is so important and what you do matters. And we thank you for your time and we welcome and need your feedback. So I think what might happen now is, Cadre, do you have any announcements or reminders for our attendees?
We
Or for me?
do.
Thank you.
We wanted to echo your thanks. So thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope it was helpful. And thank you so much to our presenters for clarifying this project type. As a reminder, the slides and recording to this webinar will be posted to the Cadre K-12 website and shared with registered participants. It will also be posted to the NSF Proposal Toolkit on our site, a resource we encourage you to explore if you are writing an NSF DRK-12 proposal. And if you have specific proposal questions, please email drk12@nsf.gov with partnership dev in the subject line. We wish you luck with your proposal. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.